So today we have started our new chapter, control and coordination, and this is the second chapter of our biology. And in this chapter, we'll understand how our body is in coordination with our brain and nervous system. And in this chapter, we'll understand the functioning, basic functioning of our body in a coordinated manner in order to respond to an external stimuli. So we'll understand the functioning of our body, the functioning of our body in a coordinated manner in a coordinated manner in order to respond to an external stimuli. So usually as we know, for survival of an organism needs to he must respond in a coordinated and a correct manner, so that in order to respond to the external stimuli it receives. So proper control and coordination is necessary to carry out essential functions of the life, and it is done by two systems. So it's usually done by two systems. So the coordination, control and coordination of our body is done by two systems. One is nervous system, second one is endocrine system. So these are two systems. Now, to understand these two, we need to understand some basic concepts. So some basic terms we'll understand first, then we'll go for this. So our whole chapter will revolve around these two components, nervous system as well as this. Now the nervous system, it includes brain, and we'll study this in a facile way, and we'll understand its mechanism, its components, its function. And second one is spinal cord, and then we'll go for its nerves, usually nerves, neurons or brain. So we'll understand a nerve cell, we'll understand one neuron, then we'll go for a mechanism of two neurons, how the external signal or the information is being carried, and it will go, how it will be transmitted from one neuron to another, how it will jump. Sometimes it jumps, it needs some transmitters, neurotransmitters like acetylcholine we are having. So these things we'll understand this neuron, then we'll shift to brain and then spinal cord, and then we'll cover this endocrine system. So it includes glands. Since these glands are usually endocrine glands, so they will secrete hormones. Hormones are, in simple words, these are some chemical messengers, and this is all about our the basic thing about our, this is the foundation of our whole control and coordination. Now we'll understand some basic terms. So firstly, we'll take first basic term usually we'll use in the whole chapter, that is stimuli. Stimuli is plural and stimulus is singular. Now the stimuli is an external signal. It is an external signal. So this stimuli, it's an external signal. Usually it will be it can be like, sometimes it can be light, sometimes heat, sometimes it can be touch, sometimes it can be smell, and sometimes it can be taste. So for these five external signals, our body are having sensory organs. So for that we need to understand the sensory organ. Sensory organs are usually eyes, these are usually ears, these are usually skin, nose and tongue. Usually there are more than five types of senses. Sixth one is proprioception or perception, we can say, and seventh one is the immune input. So we need not to go in detail. So eyes are having some specific receptors. Now these receptors, because eye is a sensory organ, so now it's light, the vision, it is a sense, and it's the sensory organ, its main component, that is this photo receptor, is responsible for the sensitivity of light. So eyes will have photoreceptors, ear will have pheno or phonoreceptors. Second will have thermoreceptors. Nose will have olfactory receptors. And tongue will have gustatory receptors. So these are respective 5 receptors which are responsible for sensing these external signals. So if these sense organs contain these receptors, so once they will get any stimulus from the external environment in terms of bright light or hotness of an object, in terms of touch, like when a nail it pricks in the foot, so smell, bad or good smell, these tastes, so they will be censored by these receptors, and these receptors will respond. So therefore we need to understand the response. So response is also one term. So it is usually response is a reaction towards this external signal. So response is usually a reaction towards external signals. So these external signals. Now we'll take a layman example. Like suppose this is our hand. Suppose it's near to a hot object, a coffee pot which is very hot. Now once it will accidentally, if unknowingly our hand it touches this hot teapot or hot teacup, so it will respond immediately, just like that reflex action. So it will respond immediately. It will this hand, it will have these touch receptors. So it is having it will have some thermoreceptors which will send an information or a message using sensory neuron to the brain, to our brain, and brain will send back the information to the hand that you need to withdraw your hand from this, take it back from this hot, because it can burn, it can create burners on this hand. So it will send it through motor neuron. In between there is also one neuron that's called interneuron. So this interneuron, it sends information from sensory to motor neuron. So it's also called relay neuron. So we understand this in the later on. We'll have a good mechanism of this afterwards. So this is the basic. So these are some basic terms. Now there is one more term that's called effector organ. Now this effector organ is usually a tissue or usually muscles. So these are usually tissue or muscles which will respond to they will respond to only those organs which will sense some stimuli. So they will respond to those organs, special organs, because when this hand it senses something from the external environment, then only this effector organ will sense. When it has sensed something, then only it can send message to the brain organ. So it responds to those organs that have sensed some external stimulus or stimuli. So these are the basic terms which we usually require in our chapter. Now we'll understand the basic cell, the basic and functional unit of our brain, that is neuron or nervous cell. Neuron or nervous cell. Now first we understand its structure, then only we can understand the whole. For that we need to now this is our dendrite. This is roughly our dendrite. So this is the nucleus. So these are our dendrites. This is our nucleus, and this part is cell body, or we can say it is cyton or cell body. This part is our axon, and this is our nerve ending or axon ending. Nerve or axon ending. Axon ending. And between here, now we'll have this myelin sheath. This is our myelin sheath. In between this myelin sheath, there is a gap that's called a node of Ranvier. Node of Ranvier, and there are some specialized cells here. They are called such one cells. So this is the basic about this. This is the basic the neuron, our structural and functional unit of our brain. Now coming to the parts of neuron, first one is dendrite. So dendrite will receive signal from receptors. It receives signal. So it will receive signal from receptors. Now the cyton, it will amplify this signal. It will multiple it. So it will amplify the signal. It will increase it. It will reproduce the signal. It will amplify to make larger. Now coming to the third part, that is axon. It will this axon will usually it will take this signal and put it forward. So it will यहाँ पे फॉरवर्ड इसको आगे ले जाने की हेल्प करता है. ठीक, इट हेल्प्स इट टू गो फॉरवर्ड. सो सिग्नल को फॉरवर्ड करने में हेल्प करती हैं. Then at the end there is this nerve ending, so it will convert this electrical impulse to chemical impulse. So it converts electric impulse to chemical impulse. Now these are the respective functions of these, and then we will move to and this last one is this node of Ranvier. So node of Ranvier is usually a conducting part from where our signal jumps. Where is this node of Ranvier? So here our signal jumps. So it is our conducting part from where this signal jumps. So this was all about this neuron, neurocell, which is our basic and structural function of our body. Now we'll move to our types of neurons. So there are usually three types of neurons. So there are usually three types of neurons. These are some basic things in order to understand this chapter in a better way. So there are usually three types of neurons. First one is sensory neuron. तो पहली sensory neuron है. दूसरी it's motor neuron. Third one is in between them, that's called interneuron or relay neuron. Now these are our three respective neurons. We'll study them, we'll understand them one by one. So this sensory neuron, it carries the information from organ to the brain. So it carries info or signal from organ to brain. These sensory neurons are also called afferent neurons. Just like that afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole of our glomerulus, which we have studied in the previous class of excretory system. Similarly, it's also having these afferent neuron. Now this motor neuron, it carries the information, it brings the information from brain back to the effector organ. So it brings info back to from brain back to the organ or effector organ. It's also called efferent neuron. So in place of this this interneuron, it usually carries information from sensory to motor. It's in between. So this carries info from sensory to motor neuron. Now we can take an example of our sensory neuron. So this, when we hear some sound, the sound, the signal is carried from our ear to the brain. That means in our ear there is this organ of Corti. So this organ of Corti is the actual hearing component of our ear. So in the ear, this ear, it sends this signal to the brain so that it will decode this signal in order for the ear to understand it in a better way. So that means this is our inner ear, and it sends this first to the brain through sensory neuron. Now in case of this motor neuron, we can take an example, like suppose when we touch a hot object, the brain cells, they transmit signals to the muscle cells of the effector organs in order to understand. So usually here, when we touch a hot object, hot teapot or hot object, okay, our brain cells send the signal. They'll send this signals to the effector organ. Effector means the organ which has censored this external signal, means which has censored this hotness of an object, so that it will withdraw its hand, or it will withdraw this effector organ from the respective object. So this is this, and these are the respective three types of neurons: sensory, motor, and interneuron. So this was all about this. Now we'll understand one question from here, means how exactly do these signals pass through and between these neurons. So between these neurons, how our signals will pass. So what is the mechanism for that? We'll understand. So we'll understand a question here simply. So the question is, how exactly the signals or a signal pass through or between these neurons. अभी न्यूरॉन्स के दरमियान ये सिग्नल पास कैसे होते हैं? Because we have heard that from one neuron to another neuron, the signal jumps and the information is being sent from one part of organ to the brain, then brain sends back, it brings back the decoded information of the signal. So we'll understand how the mechanism goes. So for that, we'll make two neurons. So these are two neurons. I cannot even make it. So once this signal, it comes from here, this is signal, this arrow represents a signal, and this signal is jumping from here, and it's received by this another neuron. So this is also a signal. So what actually happens, these are two neurons. So these are the nerve ending. This is nerve ending of first neuron, that is presynaptic neuron, and this is the usually the dendrite of another neuron. Now the signal, we need to send this signal from here to here, but in between there's a transition, and this transition is, this gap is called a synapse. As we know, the gap between the nerve ending of one neuron and the dendrite of another neuron, this gap is called a synapse, or it is simply the gap between two neurons. Simple. Now the signal has to be transmitted from here to here, so it needs some energy. So in terms of energy, we are providing it a neurotransmitter. So it needs a neurotransmitter, usually acetyl choline is there. तो यहाँ पे हमें acetyl choline की ज़रूरत पड़ेगी, so that it will send. So as the neurotransmitter is there, so it will help it. It will accelerate usually to for this signal in order to jump from here to here. Now this in the center, this first one, it's usually called presynaptic neuron, and this is the second one. This is the secondary one in which this signal has to be passed. It is called postsynaptic neuron, and this is the basic mechanism of this, that how this signal it transmits, it is being transmitted from one neuron to another neuron. So first neuron is presynaptic because it's the primary neuron, and it is followed by secondary neuron. It's called a postsynaptic neuron. In between there is a gap. It's called a synapse, and it is used. There is this neurotransmitter which accelerates the signal in order to be transmitted from one neuron to another. It's being accelerated by neurotransmitter which is called acetylcholine. So this is the basic mechanism how this neuron it jumps from one neuron, how the signal jumps from one neuron to another. So this was all about this neuron. Now we'll take an example. I'll give you people and a question, fill in the blanks. Usually we'll see who will do that. Okay, if to fill in the blanks बहुत आसान रहेगा. It is just the art of understanding. आपने क्या समझा? तो अगर मैं डेंड्राइट्स लिखूं तो उसके बाद क्या आएगा? डेंड्राइट्स के बाद उसके बाद अगर मैं एक्सान लिखूं तो उसके बाद क्या आएगा? बहुत आसान है. उसके बाद अगर मैं डैश, उसके बाद अगर मैं फिर से डैश डालूं तो उसके बाद क्या आएगा? एंड फॉलोड बाय दिस वन डैश. नाउ यू माइट हैव हर्ड दिस. आपने अभी देखा भी ये. तो हम रफली बनाते हैं इसको. अब यहाँ पे ये दिस इज डेंड्राइट एंड दिस इज ना सेल बॉडी और साइटोन. डेंड्राइट के बाद फिर साइटोन आएगा. उसके बाद एक्सान ऑलरेडी लिखा है. एक्सान के बाद बीच में नर्व एंडिंग भी आएगी, साइनेप्स भी आएगी. छोटे छोटे बीच में है सच सेलर्स, नोड ऑफ रनवीन, माइलिन शीथ. हम पूरा एक्सान लेंगे. एक्सान के बाद सीधा क्या आएगा? नर्व एंडिंग ये वाली. उसके बाद एक गैप आएगी, फिर से डेंड्राइट स्टार्ट होंगे. ये लॉजिक याद रखना है. उसके बाद फिर से डेंड्राइट. तो यहाँ पे फिर से यहाँ पे साइनेप्स, उसके बाद फिर से dendrites. So this was all about this. Hope you have understood the concepts, basic concepts of this control and coordination. So in the second video, I'll make a new video उसमें हम involuntary and voluntary action along with the most important concept of this reflex action. तो वो सीखेंगे. Till then, goodbye.